Might have to. All right. I think we're ready to go here. Let's see. All right. Okay. I think we're good to go.
All right.
We'll go 3, 2, and 1. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool. And today we've got a special guest coming on the show, Jonathan. I think it's going to be fun. Friend of mine, somebody that I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. So it's going to be a good topic.
Yeah, the 7 deadly sins of story-based marketing.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
I like the 7.
You'll see the tie-in for 7 Deadly Sins once we get into Greg's story a little bit.
Sure.
But yeah, he's in the green room, so why don't I just introduce him and bring him in?
Pull him out of that green room. He's got a beverage.
All right. So before I do, I'll just read this. I said, "Hey, Greg, can you send me a quick bio?" Because we're like friends, so it's super casual, as if it's not already around here.
Yeah.
So he sent me. He's like, "Okay, here you go." Greg and his wife run some e-commerce businesses and also help others do the same. Greg especially enjoys the power and intimacy of email marketing and just won't shut up talking about it if you get him going. So, welcome to the show, Persuasion by the Pint, Greg Johnson.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Did you write that in third person? I mean, you like to do
that? Sometimes. If it's a bio for a prestigious type of podcast show like this, then
like this one,
have to.
Yeah, definitely. Class to join up a bit. But third person, talking about yourself in third person, maybe the 8th deadly sin.
I never do it in person.
Okay.
I never talk about myself in the third person in person.
So you're not Jerry.
Not Jerry. No.
All right. That's for our older listeners or the young kids who have rediscovered Seinfeld, either one. So it was Jerry, right? The guy that talked about himself, because it wasn't Jerry Seinfeld, but it was another character. But I thought his name was Jerry too.
I just remember the character, not the name.
Yeah. I can't remember. I think it was Jerry. Maybe not. Anyway. All right. Well, we have some beverages. Like I said, this is going to be a good show. 7 deadly sins of story-based marketing, particularly email. Is that right, Greg? What we're going to be talking about?
This applies to everything, really. Like if you're using
everything in the world,
story to sell. I like email, so that's kids. Kind of the frame that I use. But
yeah, it's what you use on your kids, your wife. By the way, how many kids?
Let me get my notebook here.
Yeah, I have 7 kids.
Yeah.
No,
one of them
out
is
of here. Are you serious?
Yeah, my 7-year-old's birthday is today. So if you hear some sort of shouting or noise or ruckus upstairs, there's more noise than usual at the moment going on because of that. So
yeah,
sounds like there's a lot of noise. Where does he fall along the?
So he's kind of square in the middle. We have our oldest is 19, and our youngest is 1.
Wow!
Whoa! There's a whole story right there.
That's
absolutely.
Wow. That's
7 deadly sins.
If any of your deadly, if any of your listeners, if any of your listeners sell fertility products or anything like that, I want to reach out later. We'll get contact details at the end.
All right.
Yeah, my wife came from a very big family, and I think that the running joke was, "When are you not pregnant?" It's like, I was like, yeah. But no, I think that's great. I love it. I love a huge family. I mean, you got built-in Social Security right there, man.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's like
my dad was one of 7, but we did not continue the tradition. We stuck with 2, and that was it. So.
It's usually the way the trend goes.
You up and down.
You come from a large, you kind of go the other direction there for a while. And
because I was an only child. So
yeah. My wife and I both came from small families. We each grew up with 1 sibling. Mm-hmm. So we have no idea what we're doing. We don't know how to run a big family.
That's awesome.
And so every day is just
It's an adventure.
chaos.
Right now, the 19-year-old's probably he gets to pick up a lot of those duties, right? I mean, that's a shoulder
So
some
my
responsibility.
oldest is my daughter, and then I have a son about to turn 17. So they are, I would say, more helpful than not, which is good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good.
Let's jump into some beverages. Greg, I know you brought something. We always let our guest go first. So tell us what you brought.
Certainly. Well, I do enjoy a variety of beverages. I did not have a beer currently on hand that I was excited to bring on. So what I did is I grabbed my current favorite straight malt whiskey.
Oh,
This is from Spirit Hound Distillers, which is located in Lyons, Colorado.
Okay.
And if you guys are familiar with Oscar Blues, Dale's Pale Ale, they originated in Lyons, Colorado as well. Have since moved their main production up the road to a different city. But Spirit Hound is still in Lyons. It's just this little podunk little tasting room off the side of the road in between Boulder and Estes Park. It is the best. I think I can say this. I think it is consistently the best whiskey from a distiller that I've ever had.
Wow.
Within Colorado. There's so many great ones here. I tend to grab local.
Good Colorado
These guys are
whiskey.
my favorite.
All right.
It's fantastic.
Make a note of that.
Yeah. Very cool. And show us, you got the bottle there, or you just got the drink?
I do have the bottle.
Yeah. Show it off. Yeah. Typical, pretty typical.
That bottle is getting really low. Hold that up
is
again.
really low, actually. I don't know if you can.
It's not the first sip. You did not
You
crack
got 7 kids, man. That bottle doesn't last very long.
That's right. This is a working bottle right here.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Stays at the desk. All right. Well, Jonathan, what do you have up there on tap?
Oh, I think I've got a good one here, Sean. I have a Goose. So I had to go back on several episodes back because we've had this one on in the past, but this is I think we actually had this one back when you were still in town and we were doing the podcast together here.
Yeah.
Because I went back on some of the archives. This is a Goose Island Bourbon County Stout.
No way.
Oh, yes.
I almost bought that yesterday.
Are you serious?
They have it in stock right now at
this is the 2021, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I saw this on the shelf today.
But they were out of second mortgage applications when I wanted to pick it up. So I couldn't pull any equity out. So
yes, this is a little expensive. We're talking a little bit of change there. So but yeah, from what I recall, it was well worth it. I'm trying to remember. So the one that we had was, so I'm pulling up the notes. This was a 15.2%. This is actually a 14. What is this? Oh yeah. 14 point. It's 14 even. 14 even. This is the Goose Island Bourbon County Stout. It is a rich imperial stout that is blended from a mix of bourbon barrels from distilleries such as Heaven Hill, Wild Turkey, and Buffalo Trace. But I love Buffalo Trace.
Yeah.
Each aged in freshly emptied bourbon barrels for 8 to 14 months. Expect flavors of chocolate, vanilla, oak, whiskey, molasses. So I love the sound of that.
Yeah, that does sound good.
It's going to be thick.
Yeah, 14%, man. That's no
Sean will
joke.
be asking the questions here.
Yeah,
Greg.
All right, so I've also got one that we've had on before, just because I can only get it this time of year.
Yeah.
So when I saw it back in the store, I had to grab it. So I've got a full-grown Saint Nick.
Oh yeah.
So this is from Tubbs Brewery up in Fort Worth.
Yep.
And this is basically, it is an imperial stout loaded with everything spice and everything nice. And it's a limited run, limited edition, comes in at 12.1%. But it's be interested to see if it's as good as I remember, or if it's just like really good marketing. But this one's also pretty thick.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember it has it's like eating Christmas cookies or drinking Christmas cookies, I guess. Which, by the way, I can smell downstairs because my wife is cooking.
I almost picked up. There was a what kind? What kind is she cooking this week?
I don't know what.
Because last week you had the Reese's.
Yeah, she's making another batch of those type things.
Okay, man, I love those.
Yeah.
So I almost picked up a gift pack at the establishment today. That it was a cookie box. It was an assorted cookie box of beers. They were cookie beers.
Oh,
Cookie
cool.
beers. So I may have to try that next week. We'll see.
All right, well, gentlemen, should we?
Let's hold them up.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Man, that does taste like a cookie. So good.
A beer that tastes like a cookie. Can't beat that.
It does have a little bit of well, we'll let Greg. Well, Greg's already said what he likes. So, Greg, we give this a 1 to 4 pints on the show. You're a rabid listener, so
yeah, this. So this distillery does a lot of their stuff is like limited run, single barrel stuff. So different batches have very different character. Some of them are more like a Scotch. Some of them are just very, very mild. This one is mild, but with a lot of character to it. Just imagine what a really complex whiskey smells like. All the different.
So would this be like smoky on the smoky end, or would
this
it be
is
more
not on the smoky end?
Okay.
Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of smoky, peaty liquor.
Yeah, that's what they like here in Texas.
Yeah,
very smoky.
I kind of go the other way. Like I like cognac and Armagnac just for that part of the flavor profile of a distilled and barreled spirit. So this is my favorite bottle that we've ever received from Spirit Hound. So this is definitely a 4 for me.
I said 1 to 4, didn't I? I meant 1 to 5. So
this is definitely a 5 for me. Do you do fractional? I mean, can I do 4.8?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you're teetering. You don't want to give it the I was about to hit the applause button on a 5.
Yeah, that's.
So you're going to hold off on that one.
I'm going to
that's sacred. That's reserved only for the elite.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So 4.8. All right. Very cool.
4.8.
All right, Jonathan. Is it as good as you remember?
Well,
it's a different year, so it's a little different.
Yeah, every year's different. We did, when we last had this, obviously this was before we had a rating system, so I couldn't see what we had mentioned. I think what I said was it was thick and thick and thick. So, which is still the case. It's good, but you can taste that 14%. Yeah, this is one of those, if you make it through the bottle, it's good night. So I'm going to say 3.8. It's a little heavy for my taste. Yeah. So,
okay. That's fair.
But it was worth trying. So,
yeah. So I'm going to give this, this is unique because it's definitely Christmas flavored. Like it tastes like, it's got a lot of ginger in it. And it does have a little bit of an aftertaste, which is not my favorite part of it, but the flavor is so good at the top that I put up with the little bit of aftertaste. And like we said, I think last week, you just keep drinking. You don't have to worry about the aftertaste.
That's right.
Just keep going.
Going.
Yeah. So I'm going to give this a 4.25. Just the bitterness on the end just kills it a little bit. But I know it also gets better as you go because as it breathes, it gets a little better. So
yeah.
But I'm going to give it 4.25.
Fair score.
All right. Well, I'm excited about this. Greg and I have been we kind of planned this a little bit over the last week. Greg did all the work. I just kind of threw out an idea.
Cool.
And
we're going to be showing some graphics.
I don't know.
I don't have any graphics.
I was looking
but he did tell me today, and this got me super excited for all our geeks out there, especially copy type geeks. All 7 of his points start with the same letter.
Ooh.
Isn't that sexy?
Memorable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So I'm excited about that. That makes me really curious too. I don't know if we'll get through all 7 as we tend to ramble a little bit, but we'll do our best. But yeah. So
Greg, outside of having 7 kids, give our audience just a really Greg, a brief background of,
Sure.
of who you are and kind of what you do and
Yeah, absolutely.
your history.
Let's keep it brief. Brief-ish.
Absolutely.
So I've been a full-time business owner since 2013, but started out doing something completely different than this. My background is in science and chemistry, and I actually started a business with some partners where we were providing refurbished laboratory equipment to startup labs and customers who couldn't go out and drop millions of dollars on brand new capital equipment. So
Cool.
we were a good alternative to that, still providing things that worked and getting into a lot of the training and support as well. Turns out it wasn't very fun. I ended up building something that I didn't really enjoy doing every day, and almost right as we had started that, I was doing e-commerce on the side for fun, vacation money, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as my skill level and knowledge level with that grew, I realized that I really, really enjoyed it. The idea of having global reach and impact with some silly little thing that you sell online. And in wanting to get better at that, I, by necessity, started learning about marketing and how to really position things appropriately so that somebody would want to buy the thing that you have. And so that has just been a like an interest out of necessity, but has kind of become a passion. Like I love this. I love the applied psychology of marketing, but also really like to serve people in this way. My last business was very service based, but I found that I didn't enjoy serving people in that way. So what I get to do now with, sorry, Sean, cut you off. My wife and I run a business called The Little Catholic Box. It's a subscription box quarterly. My wife curates items from other people. So we're kind of providing distribution and exposure for people who do like handmade arts and crafts type stuff. And then we blast it out to our audience. And the aspect of this that I have just kind of fallen in love with is really the email marketing. Like I love writing emails. I love having the communication, kind of building the relationship with people. And I enjoy it enough that I do it on the side for other people as well. So I kind of do this, I don't know, like advising or consulting type thing on the side where I'm helping other people to kind of do what I do in their own business, because this is not a easy thing for many people. I feel like it is for me, and I love doing it. And so I can kind of plug myself into other brands and other people's stuff and help them out as well.
So this is a subscription box?
It is.
So physical, so people get it's like a
physical items. Yep.
Yeah. Monthly thing. So cool. That's awesome. So you kind of go out and source a lot of different things every month and package those and send those out to your subscribers. That's cool.
Basically.
Love those.
Yeah.
I love that model.
Yeah. It's a cool model. Yeah, cool. That's what I was going to ask. So you didn't really interrupt me. You were on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
So very cool. All right. Well, let's jump into the 7 deadly sins. And the way this came up, Jonathan was like, we were like, Greg wanted to talk about storytelling. I was like, well, we've done that quite a few times, even though it's very important. I was like, why don't we take the flip side of that? So we decided to take the flip side, and I made Greg work his brain a little bit to come up with the topics. Side. So yeah, so what we don't want to be doing, and I'm sure what we should be doing will also come out in that. So
sure, yeah.
So Greg, I'm gonna let you drive, and we'll cut you off as we have questions.
Sounds good. Now, just to be clear, I'd like to point out, Sean, you suggested, hey, Greg, do you think you could do the 7 deadly sins of story-based marketing? And this was in a messenger chat, and I was like, yeah. And I was thinking, yeah. And then like you immediately sent another one. You're like, but it could also be 5. Like you didn't think I could do 7, right?
Yeah, that's true. I did. I
And
was trying to let you
I
off
was
easy in
like,
case.
that's why I said, no, we'll do 7.
Never heard the 5 deadly sins. That just
I
wouldn't
know.
It doesn't
work.
work.
I know.
No, it does.
And I thought,
But see, that was persuasion because I knew he wouldn't go for that.
right. And then you knew I'd go above and beyond.
Exactly.
That's
And
right.
use alliteration, make
Yep.
them all
Exactly.
start with the same letter. So
Yes.
that's where we are.
Yep.
I like it.
So
all right. So what is the first? And these are in no particular order of
no
severity.
particular order.
Right. So,
Yeah.
So what is the first deadly sin of story-based marketing?
So real quick, I want to give just I want to put a box around this. Here's some context. So the definition I'm using here for story-based marketing is when you are using story just as a tool to engage your readers. Oftentimes in emails, what I like to do is like pull in anecdotes from my life and incorporate it some way into the message or call to action that I want to lead to. So this is kind of the model that I use for a lot of the writing that I do. I've seen other brands do this, other people do this as well, just kind of engaging people with a story and then having that lead into something relevant to the brand. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. The first deadly sin of story-based marketing is being self-absorbed. So when you are telling an anecdote or relating a personal story, you have to keep in mind that what you're trying to do is you're trying to achieve some sort of resonance with the reader. So you can tell your story and it can be interesting, but what makes it interesting to somebody listening oftentimes is how they relate that to themselves in some way. There can be, we can think about stories that we like to engage in, movies, television, other media, but we relate to the characters oftentimes in a way that, like a hero. The reason that heroes are desirable characters is because we see something in them that we either see in ourselves or wish that we saw in ourselves. So
right.
if you are telling a story without, I guess, an eye towards how this is going to be received by your target audience, like why do they care? Why would they care? If you're just rambling on about yourself and your own thing without understanding how that applies to the people that you're talking to, then it's boring. It's flat out boring.
So how do you, so there's a lot of, like shouldn't use I, but when you tell a story, especially if you're using anecdotes from your own life, you kind of have to use I.
Yes.
So kind of how do you balance those two things?
So let me give a concrete example of this.
Cool.
Somebody that I'm kind of working with at the moment, we were doing basically some copy review, and we were looking at one of his emails that he had sent in the past, and it was very much this kind of brand peacocking, right? Here's our brand, and we're so great, and people love us, and we're so good at what we do, and we have the best products, and we have the lowest prices, and you should love us because that's what people do is they love us. That's how it came across.
Right.
And you read that and you're just like,
yeah,
you either don't care or you're
ego.
actually repelled by it. It's like, who the hell are these people? I don't, what? So that's what I really mean when it's just nothing but self-promotion without any kind of lead up or like reason for anybody to care what you have to say.
Right.
And there's usually when people take that approach, there's usually very little story in it. It's more like telling, but it's not telling a story.
Well, what this was supposed to be was kind of a brand origin story.
Okay.
It was, hey, we started back in such and such date because we wanted to do this. And we're so awesome at this aspect of it. And we're really great at this aspect of it. And everybody loves us for this. So I mean, the original intent was to tell a story, but the story that was told was not engaging. It was
Right.
boring.
Yeah.
It was completely self-absorbed, like totally inwardly focused. Like there was no there wasn't an understanding of how this was going to land in somebody's inbox and how they would receive it.
Yeah, but Bob, I don't know if you know Bob Bly, but we've had him on the show before. But I follow him. Sean follows him, I'm sure. Old school copywriter. I love reading him sometimes because he rails against these up and coming copywriters who they're pretty much ego driven. Everything's about how well I how much money I can make my clients and blah blah blah. It all centers around who they are.
Yes.
And he laughs them off. It's like these greenhorns don't know anything about marketing if that's how they're trying to position themselves. Yeah. So totally agree.
Right.
So what did you do for that client? Did you totally start over? Or were you able to salvage an email like that? Like, what was your approach?
I basically, what we did is I kind of outlined what my strategy is for this type of thing, what my template is. And it's a really basic email template. It's basically you lead in with a hook. You kind of tell a legitimate personal story, like anecdote, something that you would talk about with your friends at the bar or a restaurant, a story that you would tell people that you're sitting around bullshitting with, basically.
Yeah.
So if the story that you're telling is not interesting enough to share at the bar or dinner party, then you're doing it wrong. Use that kind of narrative flow and have a clear call to action that you're driving towards. And between the story and the call to action, have a transition that makes sense. And if you can't find one that makes sense, then blatantly say, hey, this transition doesn't make sense, but and that's it basically. And I think just that reframing for him about how to approach this, and that this is a conversation. Like an email is a conversation between two people. Even though we're sending it one to many, it's received as a conversation between two individuals.
Right.
And so treat it like that. That should be the narrative style if you want to do this way. And so he just rewrote it on his own. Like I actually had nothing to do with the revision or rewriting. A week later, he sent me back a revised version telling the same story, but in that narrative fashion. And it was amazing. It was so good because he, instead of just talking about how great the brand was, he talked about why the brand exists. And it was really the origin story from the point of view of the founder. Like, why would you even do this? What was the purpose? What problem were you solving? Who were you trying to help? And he did such a good job. He told that story and incorporated it with really the core values of the brand. And it landed so well. Like you read it, and even though I'm not the target market for this particular brand, reading it, you end up liking the guy at the end of it, even if what they sell has nothing to do with your life. You just like, wow, this is a good guy. He's built something that helps people. This is important.
Cool.
So that was like he flipped. It was the same info. He just kind of flipped the narrative of how it was being presented.
Yep.
Instead of a billboard, it was a conversation.
Instead of being self-absorbed, he was thinking about the reader.
Yes.
So, all right. So being self-absorbed is number one. Let's move on to number two. What's the second deadly sin of story-based marketing?
The second deadly sin of story-based marketing is being spurious.
Ooh,
so let me find this here.
Ooh,
I'm sure all the listeners know what spurious means, but
I don't. So
I don't know. I'm trying to write this down. I don't even know how to spell it. Spurious.
So spurious basically means fake, phony, unbelievable. And what I'm trying to convey with this one is, if it's unrelatable or unbelievable, if it feels contrived, if it feels made up, then people are not going to care. And this is actually tricky when you have a really fantastical true story. Like if it's so crazy, like, it's so crazy this must be real. It's very easy when you're telling that to just become very like sensational with it. And again, that I think can turn into this, people are so used to sensationalized news and information, it actually causes them to kind of tune out or turn off the message. So you want to keep it, as like a conversational storytelling. So if the story that you're telling is extraordinary and fantastic, you almost have to temper that down, or at least acknowledge along the way, in like a self-referential way. Like, I know this sounds unbelievable, but this is true. This is what happened.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, like, where I learned copywriting. We talked about the barstool conversation. You mentioned that earlier. It's like, if you were about to tell a crazy, unbelievable story, the first thing you might say is like, hey, I know this is hard to believe, but I'm telling you, like, this is how it happened. And you remind people along the way with these, and that makes for great, like, transition or pauses in the copy. It's like, I know. I thought it was crazy too. I couldn't believe this was happening. And then you continue the story, right? Just to check in and let them know that, it sounds unbelievable.
Exactly.
And that adds a ton of credibility. If you could just kind of get in the head of the reader, and if they're like when you feel as a writer, you have to kind of have this gut to know what the reader is feeling. You kind of have to put yourself there, and you're like, okay, this is probably where they're starting to doubt again, or forgot that I said that this was unbelievable. So I need to remind them here.
Right. Yeah. If you know that objections are creeping in, you can address those as you go.
Sure.
So that you don't have this buildup of incredulity or disbelief about what you're doing, because then it loses its impact. When people detach from the story, then you lose the benefit of using a story in the first place, knowing that it kind of sidesteps around like that logical, rational filter that, for what we're doing is kind of a wall in between where we are and the decision that we'd like them to potentially make. The other way that this plays in is in cases where you are is different than where your audience or customers are. Meaning, if you're kind of in a like a leadership role or teaching role or some sort of aspirational role for your characters or audience, then I think you have to be careful about how you deal with that gap, because I mean, I think we've all seen the marketers with the jets and the Lamborghinis, and the goal there is to have this aspirational character that people are striving for. But I think when it's done poorly, then what you do is you create this barrier. It's like that person is so distant from where I am. When I fail to see the connection from me to them, if I no longer believe that this person can lead me to where they are or where I want to be, then I tune it out. I stop listening because it's lost believability.
Yeah, a good example of that, especially in the internet marketing world, is, and this is this happens with the kind of stages of market sophistication that we talk about with Eugene Schwartz, and that it gets more and more fantastical. So it used to be like, hey, you want to make a couple extra $100 or $1,000 each month to cover your car payment or whatever, as far as internet marketing or home opportunities. And then it got to, $10K a month, six figures a year. And now, like, it's hard to find something that's like not $1 million a year. Right. And that's a lot for people to, if you're just working a job or if you're just, doing whatever, to go from there to $1 million a year sounds great, but most people can't even comprehend what that would be like. They can't actually believe that that's available to them. Right. I agree. We forget where we came from and the journey we went on. And that maybe your first offer, especially to cold audiences, needs to be how to make your first $1,000 as opposed to your first $1 million.
Right. If they can't see themselves with, at that end state, if what you're offering is too far beyond what they're imagining, then it doesn't land. It's like offering apples and they want an orange. So even if what you're offering legitimately can get them far further than they realize, like that's an education piece that you don't need to do right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I know when we did financial copy, one of the things we would do in a promotion is we would work that up over the piece of the copy. And I think you could do that in email as well. Like, let's say you did have a legitimate $1 million plan or whatever is comparable in your industry, weight loss, whatever. You could ramp up. You could start the email with an example that's much lower, how to make your first 1,000. And then when you learn this system, blah, 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 you could repeat that process and turn 1,000 into 5 or 10, keep at it for 6 to 12 months. And it's reasonable. You could turn that into, 15 or 20,000 a month. So you could, in a relatively short amount of time, ramp that up, which is much more believable to ratchet it up than it is just to come out of the gate swinging with, in this example, $1 million or 100 pounds or whatever it might be for you.
Yeah. But you have to connect the dots from the base of the mountain to the top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you can do that in a story, all the better. Maybe maybe your first time you offered your course, let's say it's a weight loss course, you were able to get people, results where they could lose 10 pounds in 90 days. Right. And then you learned this other technique and you compounded it. And all of a sudden, when you put the two together, it was worth 30 pounds in 90 days. That's more believable as you stack those things. And it actually makes it look like you have more of a system too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But you get to tell a story along the way. All right. So number 1 is being self-absorbed. Number 2 is being spurious. Joel, I can think about Jonathan as Steve Spurrier when I hear that word. So,
the visor, anyway, the visor,
the old ball coach.
Yep.
And then, so what's our third deadly sin, Greg?
The third deadly sin of story-based marketing is being sluggish.
Sluggish.
Being sluggish.
Spurious and sluggish.
And so you went sluggish. Deep into thesaurus for this episode.
Oh, not that deep. This is all right here. This just floats around right here.
That's impressive.
Sluggish is after you drink a whole one of these.
I was going to say, Jonathan, I was going to check in with you because you're like, I saw you do the refill.
Yep.
And I can always tell when you do the refill because it switches hands.
It switches hands. It does. I do the old switcheroo, and I think you're right, Sean. It does get a little better as it breathes.
Yeah.
So
all stout, especially the richer the stouts and imperial stouts are, the more air they get, the better they taste. It's almost like you need to open them 10 minutes before the show and just let them breathe. Plus, they're supposed to be at like 58 degrees or something like that, not ice cold like a regular beer. So,
something worth trying is running one of those through like one of those wine aerators that you use for like a complex red wine. It's the same principle. You want to open it up a little bit, get some oxidation going on.
Yeah, like a good Cabernet or
absolutely. Yeah,
that's a good idea.
I might have to revise the rating on this because
that or your taste buds have just succumbed to the alcohol content. One of the two.
Yeah, something has changed my rating for sure. I don't know if it's the alcohol or if it's actually the taste has gotten better, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm about to break into the second one. So, Greg, you may have to run the show shortly. But yeah.
All
right. So I got us off track. I'm sluggish. Why
sluggish?
Is it?
Let's talk about sluggish. So sluggish has to do with pace. And the analogy I like to use for this one is we all have that relative, usually a little older, and they start to relate a story to you, and the story has no end. There are no plot elements to the story. There's no climax. There's no resolution.
Preach.
It's just simply a stream of consciousness
I'll write that down.
rambling, relating, history or supposed history of particular events. So I think we've all experienced that. At least one
probably
point.
will in the next couple of weeks if you haven't recently.
Yeah,
if you're having family,
I'm sure all of us around Thanksgiving have experienced.
Yes. So
speaking of Thanksgiving, I caught myself watching, which is a Thanksgiving classic, Trains, Planes, and Automobiles, and to support what you're saying, it's so funny. There's so many great lines in that movie, but Steve Martin, if you're going to tell a story, have a point, right? I mean, that's what he's telling, John Candy.
Yes.
It's like the lovable John Candy in the movie. It's so funny. It's so funny. There's so many great lines.
Yeah, I enjoy that one.
So talk to us about pace. How do you do that?
Yep.
So I think what this comes down to is the thing that was actually most difficult for me to learn about copywriting. And it's this idea that less is more. So if I'm kind of brain dumping like an anecdote that I know I want to use, and I pound it out, I tell the story like I tell it. You have to, if you want it to be highest quality, to land well, to actually be a good story, you have to go back through and look at your narrative flow and be willing to cut things out, like cut out details that don't tie directly in to the narrative. I mean, we're not, in this kind of setting, we're not writing a novel. We have a specific goal in mind, and read every single sentence. And is it necessary? Is it driving towards the goal? Do you need it in context for the thing that comes before and the thing after? And just doing some editing so that people continue to read, because attention is a valuable asset, and it does us no good to squander that asset. If somebody opens an email and we're using a story and they start reading it and lose interest, there's a good chance they don't come back. If they open another email later and see that it's another story, they might just bounce right out saying, this person is boring. I don't want to read what they have to write. So, this is true, I think, of any long form copy. If you are putting a lot of words in front of somebody's eyeballs, then each one of those words needs to matter. And that's just you respecting their time.
I'm curious, Greg, how, on average, how long would you say most of your emails are? Have you ever done a word count and kind of figured out because I know a lot of writers, they kind of end up about the same place. Like when I write long form sales letters, it's going to be about 5,000 words. When I write an email, it's going to be about 800.
Yeah.
Like I just know that's kind of where I land personally. I'm curious.
I would say on average, I'm probably around 800 plus or minus 200 or 300. Kind of depends on what I'm doing right there. But I mean, I feel like that's a pretty solid.
It's hard. Like it's hard to tell a story. I mean, unless you're Hemingway, your 6-word story, but like it is hard to tell a story with the emotion, with the call to action, with everything, in less than 800, I think.
Yeah.
But you're right. If it gets sluggish, it doesn't matter if it's 200 words, it's too long.
Right. And when I'm talking about story, this is very much like anecdote based. Like this is a single scene in a movie. This is a snapshot. This is a single funny or relevant or entertaining event. It doesn't have the arc of
right. It's not a 3-act play.
It's not a 3-act play. It's not a 3-act play.
So this is might be a vignette, or I think a good way for anybody that's ever been to church, like a pastor, he will tell a story to make one of his 3 points that he's making in a sermon.
Right. Yeah, perfect.
Usually a family story that's kind of funny but relatable. I'm curious, like, and I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but you knew this could happen. Is most of your stuff like your own life, or do you pull stuff? Because there's books. I've got several books back here that are like story collections that authors and speakers and things like that use. Do you rely on that, or is it all like from your life or what you're noticing out in the world?
It depends on the brand. So the brand that I do with my wife, it's either our own or stories from like people in the community, the vendors we work with. We actually love to tell the vendor stories. So think of, imagine a stay-at-home mom who is really good at a particular craft, and like they love it, and they would, it's something that helps them kind of support their family. And so we're sharing that story with our audience, and our audience
that's a great point. These stories don't always have to come from you. They can come from your readers.
Yes.
I know happens a lot.
Yeah, for certain brands, telling user generated stories are great.
Yeah,
it's perfect, especially in cases where the brand owner is maybe not the ideal customer. So I am not a 55-year-old Catholic female.
You could be, though, if you wanted. We're in that kind of world, man.
In this day and age, absolutely.
If you want to be, you could be.
So, there's
it's procedures for that.
Noted. So what I do for that is very different than what I do. I have this newsletter that I also do kind of to the like the business owner and marketing community, and that one is just pure me. And so those are my personal stories. Oftentimes when I'm helping somebody else with this, ideally I want it to be their stories. I don't want to make up a story for another founder and try to plug that in. They already, like, everybody has stories. It's just a matter of being able to access those in a helpful way, kind of draw those out and engineer it into something that is usable for this purpose.
So I think that's a great point. And we're probably not going to get through all 7, but hang on tight, because Greg's got a way for you to kind of get more of this with this newsletter. We'll give you a link here in a minute. How do you recognize a good story, like from your life? I think you said sourcing stories. This is a key thing for people who are speakers, authors, marketers. Like, how do you recognize and train yourself to recognize a good story, or to know it when you hear it?
I think there's 2 main ways that I use. And I don't know if I've put a lot of thought into this, to be honest. So I don't know if these are the best 2 ways, but this is how I generate my own content right now. So I'll share that.
Yeah.
So in one case, that you want, like, what your call to action is. Where you want to end. The lesson you want to teach. So
begin with the end in mind.
Begin with the end in mind. And, hey, I want to promote this particular offer. And here's kind of how we're going to frame it. Do I have any good metaphors or analogies that would help get me there? Do I have something that relates in my own life that I could tie in and plug in here? So when I really first started doing this, that was the approach. I'm like, here's what I want to end up. What can I access in my own brain that I can craft into this thing that I need? And so that's one way to do it. The other way is a little bit more passive, but I think a lot more helpful over the long term. And that's just being aware of what is going on in your life every day. I think something that is story worthy happens at least once a day in every single person's life.
That's a great point.
If you recognize it when it happens, like, jot it down in your journal or your notepad, or send yourself an email that like, hey, this is something funny or educational or entertaining to relay. I'm totally going to use this. I could use it for purpose 1, 2, or 3. and then it's just banked, and
Yeah.
you can pull that thing off the shelf when you need it. I've been doing that more and more, and I have like a pretty good catalog of experiences that I can pull in when I need them, which is a great feeling to have. It's like, when you sit down at staring at a blank screen, staring at a deadline, like that's no fun. It's really hard to be creative when that's the situation. But if you have a bank you can pull from, it makes it more fun and easy, I would say.
Yeah, I'll share this little tip. And this is something I learned from Taylor Swift. We're besties. And I heard an interview with her one
on
time.
Instagram, right?
Yeah.
You guys back and forth on Instagram.
All the time.
Yep.
But I heard her interviewed about her songwriting process, because I'd say she's pretty good at writing songs. I mean, pretty good. And the way she does it is she has on her iPhone, she opens up the Notes app, which is, native on every iPhone. Android has a similar app. And whenever she hears a line or sees a scene out the tour bus window or gets a quote or whatever, she'll just jot it down, and there's a list. And I have a thing in mind. One of my things is called quotes and thoughts. And if I'm out, especially when I'm out walking, like I'll just get these flashes because I'm not worried about anything else, or I'm listening to an audiobook, I'll hear it. Or like you said, Greg, something will happen, with my family, or something I see in a movie when we're watching a movie that I was like, oh, that could be a cool lesson, and I could use that movie as that. I'll just jot it down, because you will not remember it.
Right.
You cannot count on remember it.
Right.
So you got to capture them. So I just use this notes in my phone, and then when I'm ready to sit down, I've got a whole list that I can scroll through. And so you got to capture them, though, because if you just think you're going to, I'll remember that next Tuesday when I'm writing emails.
Right.
You may or may not.
Won't.
Yeah. So that's good. And I think the more you do it, the easier it gets. Like you start to notice, and it's kind of like comedy. Good comics, they just notice stuff about their lives. But there are formulas that comics use to kind of mine that. Just like songwriters, there's formulas for songwriting. There's formulas for comedy, And I think that's another place you can go, is you can, the Comedy Bible is a great tool that you can learn to use to tell stories. Like it'll walk you through how to just see the world different, so that you can tell better stories and all that.
And I think having an understanding of comedic delivery helps a lot with this pacing issue.
Yeah.
Right. It's difficult to send out something sluggish if you have a good working knowledge of what makes a good joke delivery, because that is all about timing, and timing is more important, I think, in comedy than in relaying an anecdote, but it definitely makes a difference, right? You don't want to be the rambling uncle. You want to be delivering the snappy one-liners instead.
Yeah, you don't want to be like this show. You want to be
absolutely
quick, like these 10 and 15 minute podcasts.
Right.
So
we ramble. That's our
thing.
That's our thing. It's a ramble.
But we do throw some one-liners.
Hour and a half later, it's like, what were those 7 deadly sins?
Yeah. So far, let me just recap. We are being self-absorbed was number 1. Being spurious was number 2. Being sluggish was number 3. And number 4 is?
The 4th deadly sin of story-based marketing is being shallow.
Ooh.
Shallow. Oh, I love that one.
I just immediately saw like Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. The Shallows.
So what I want to convey.
I had that song on iTunes for so long,
man.
So I'm ashamed to admit that. I'm gonna delete that right now. Okay, never mind.
That movie was like, that's the 3rd remake of that movie when it came out.
Really?
Most people don't know that. Yeah, it came out in the 20s originally. A Star is Born.
Wow.
So, anyway, some of the music was new, but the storyline was actually, it's the 3rd version of it. Barbra Streisand, I think, did it in the 70s. So anyway, sorry, Greg.
There's a finite number of storylines. I mean, we're all recycling the same stuff on some level.
Yeah. Look at the movie industry, right?
Yeah, it's all 80s.
Yeah, they're
movies.
just blatant. They're just
blatantly stealing the 80s movies.
Yeah.
Although I am going to see Top Gun, so
absolutely,
I'm ready. And The Matrix, which I guess is
and
90s.
The Matrix,
but
and Ghostbusters, and
what they've done is they've figured out how to really capitalize on nostalgia.
Nostalgia. That's what, Sean and I have talked about that for so long.
Yeah.
People love nostalgia. Takes us back to our childhood.
It's safe. We've talked about that before. Like, what is safe? People want to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
There's also an element of I think those of us kids, like, we want to share that memory that we have in a relatable way to them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is why you can make the same movie every 10 years and all the same people go to see it every single time.
Yep.
And you pull in a few new people along the way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and here's the cool thing: Marvel has found a way to botch every movie they've ever made, and then create this thing called a multiverse, which none of their timelines make sense. But now if you just repackage that as the multiverse, it's like anything's possible, right? So
that's right.
Yeah, we'll be there,
as we'll see in Spider-Man coming up soon.
They've given themselves infinite artistic license in what they're able to do. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. They can recast at will now, right?
Yeah, it's like time travel movies. Yeah,
exactly.
All right. So being shallow.
So, this is what I want to convey here is, if you are trying to explain to your readers why they should care about you and your brand, like, how does this play into their own journey, into their own lives? You need to tell a story that hooks and resonates. So again, this is kind of I think a different aspect from that example that I shared before. Just telling people that XYZ is true, that XYZ happened, is very different than walking people through that journey as participants and showing them that XYZ is true, that XYZ happened. So this is just kind of like the quality of the way that they are drawn in. So that, tell a story in a way that people care about what it is that you're saying.
So what comes to mind for me on this, Greg, is instead of being shallow, you want to hit the V spot, not the G spot, the V spot.
Okay.
What is the V spot? I'm glad you asked.
Our podcast and
we just went to it. I know we just went to it. Explicit. The V spot is vulnerability, right? And that's the opposite to me of shallow in writing would be to be vulnerable.
Yes.
You agree with that?
I completely agree with that. You want to relate to the reader that you are a real human being. You're not some cardboard cutout
or a corporation or
corporation.
Whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, I think that exactly conveys what I'm talking about here. Being a three-dimensional person to the reader, that is how you build rapport. Like, when they actually legitimately care about what you have to say, trying to sell them stuff it's like an afterthought. It's actually not that difficult. People, if you've provided them value through these communications, then there's already some desire for reciprocity built up. But if you're just constantly carpet bombing them with statements, right, without any context around them, or my favorite is the companies that send nothing but discount codes. Like, that must work at scale because I see so much of it.
Of course it does, yeah.
But like the people who click through and buy, like, they don't care about you. Like, they just want the thing at the best price. That is just not it is not the most effective way, especially for a small business, to build a brand and to scale.
Well, Groupon back in the day proved that, right?
Yeah.
And Jonathan and I were like, I don't even know if Groupon's still around, but there was this Groupon effect that it would actually crush a lot of the small businesses that tried to use it.
Yeah.
Because people would come in, get the discount, and never come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know of a local business that got wiped out by running a Groupon.
Yeah.
It was like a high-end baby gear boutique. And they basically went bankrupt because they put together a very poorly thought out offer and they got like wiped out in a month.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Very sad.
Yeah.
Speaking of Groupon, I know it is still a thing because I make occasional trips to our local post office. I do a little bit of self-fulfillment with some of our physical products. And there's a guy somewhere around here that takes giant 55-gallon trash bags full of little Groupon envelopes to the post office several times a week.
Wow.
I'm talking thousands and thousands of units of something. I don't know what the guy sells. But yeah, so somewhere like this guy has tapped into something that somebody wants in tiny little packages.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. That'd be worth following that guy home, see what he's up to. Those may be body parts for all you know. I don't know.
It's either body parts or boner pills. I mean, what else could it be?
Yeah, it's one of the two. All right, so we're running short on time, Greg, and we've got 3.
We're on the 5th.
We've got 3 left. So I'm gonna actually let Greg choose 5, 6, or 7, whichever he wants to kind of end with. And we're gonna give a link at the end to sign up for Greg's newsletter. And Greg, are you gonna be able to deliver the other 2 if they sign up through that link?
Yes. What I will do is manually deliver them. Right now, this link points to my main newsletter list. You'll get the regular welcome flow, but I've got people coming in from this link tagged, and I'll deliver the all 7 of the deadly sins.
Cool.
So this is a tough choice because there's 3 left, and there's 2 that I'm kind of excited about talking about.
All right. So
I'm gonna go with number 5 as written, just because it has so much alliteration.
Oh, I love alliteration.
Okay. And this is number 5.
I like that. We're not getting out of sequence.
Right? We're not getting out of sequence, although they're in no particular order.
So, the obsessive
Number 5,
compulsive people are okay. Like,
yes,
the people that have to complete
still.
things, though, people that have to complete things, they're just freaking out right now. They're like,
Well,
oh my God,
wife,
you're not going to tell me 6.
There's a lot of OCD people that are taking medication now as we speak.
Just as an apology to OCD people, when my wife and I were dating, I remember this one time her mom had baked a tray of brownies, right? And I don't know what compelled me to do this, but I thought it would be so funny. And so I did. As it was cooling on the stove, I got a butter knife and I cut myself the first brownie. I cut it in the center of the pan diagonally.
Yeah. Thank you very much for doing that.
Oh.
You're the kind of guy that creates havoc at Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Just like
you cut like a diamond.
I cut a diamond in the middle of the pan of brownies.
Yes,
I love it.
And my to-be wife at the time we ate it kind of chuckled to each other. And we're still in the house about 20 minutes later when her mom found it and shouted angrily down the stairs at my wife's brother. Justin! Like she just instantly blamed him for it.
Absolutely.
And it was.
I saw somebody did that on Instagram with a pie. They cut a triangle out of the middle of the pie.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that is
fantastic.
brilliant.
Thanksgiving. So if you don't have anything political to say to, stir up the controversy in your Thanksgiving meals, that's what you do.
Yeah, you just cut out a little triangle in the middle of the thing. So, all right. So what's number 5?
Number 5. Shoddy structure and style. And this is something that's easy to fix if you know to fix it. So we have all opened emails where it's a giant paragraph block of text.
Oh, you're all right. I love this.
I'm looking at you, school newsletters, right? When people who understand the mechanics of proper writing but don't understand the mechanics of proper email writing.
Yeah.
It's a different medium. It's consumed in a different
or
way.
just visual awareness,
The importance,
spatial awareness.
Absolutely.
These are the same people that cannot load a dishwasher correctly.
Amen. I agree with you. And I have strong opinions talking about stirring things up at Thanksgiving. If we want to talk about loading the dishwasher sometime, I'll come back on and we can do that.
That's right. I love it.
That could be
strong
a whole show.
opinions.
All sorts of controversy.
Yeah.
Yes. Relationships broken left and right.
Yes.
Amen.
Oh man. Yeah.
Some that need to be, right?
Yeah, you just don't need some people in your life. That's just
absolutely.
a fact.
And some you don't, right?
So shoddy structure and style. This is a big one for me.
This has to do with writing mechanics and layout. Like the way that people consume an email is different than the way that they consume a college essay. And you need to understand that fact and respect the fact that that this is the case. So let me give you a couple easy, quick tips here. What I do in emails, because the goal is you want people to consume it. You want people to keep scrolling, read the next line. So you can make this easier for them with more white space, larger font sizes. You know, if your email program has like an 11 or 12 point default size, like that's too small. Make it bigger. Everybody from staring at their screens all day, like everybody's eyesight is a little bit worse than it was 20 years ago. So
this is especially true, Craig, if your market is over 45, where reading glasses start to kick in.
Yeah.
If you're not using at least a 16-point font, you are hurting readability.
100%. I use 16 as a minimum, and for our older demographics, I use 20.
Wow.
So don't write paragraphs. Each sentence or two or three should be its own paragraph, so that you're breaking it up. You have plenty of white space, and you don't need to follow strict, grammatical and punctuation convention in an email. Like nobody's going to grade your writing.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to convey is conversation. So use a punctuation where it's appropriate to convey what you want, right? So if you want to pause, you can do a dash, you can do 3 dots. There's no need to use a semicolon in email copywriting. It's as far as I can tell. Like it's too formal, right?
Yeah.
So just understand.
Nobody knows what to do at a semicolon.
Right.
Right. Like dot, okay, this is kind of a continued paused thought. Dash is kind of the same thing.
Right.
Comma, a slight pause, period, end, white space. But yeah, nobody knows what to do with a semicolon.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Yeah, you don't need it.
It's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
It is. I actually have a client that uses it in the place of a colon, which is annoying on my part.
Oh yeah,
because they
it's
use it
the same thing.
No, it's not even the same thing. They use it in the time. Like,
oh, that's
if
weird.
it's 5:30, they use a semicolon.
Yeah, it's like those Europeans that use a comma instead of a decimal for money. That's weird. Don't do that.
That bothers me more than the triangle cut out of the pie.
I'm telling you, I want to jump across the screen every time I see that and say, listen, this is inappropriate use of semicolons.
Throw the flag, man. Throw the flag.
Yeah. But yeah, so the point is
never do it in the time. It is never.
That it's bizarre. I've never heard of that. But the point is there is a visual aesthetic to your writing, and be aware of what that is.
Yeah.
And if we want to really go off on a tangent, like if you want to see the power of the visual aesthetic in writing, check out E.E. Cummings. Pretty good. Like, so he's a poet. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he used the layout of text and letters on the page as part of the information he was trying to convey. And it's super clever. And like, you don't have to be that clever, but just have an awareness of what your email looks like when people open the email, and make it easy for them to read. You want them to get to the bottom, right? So Yeah, grammar, not so important. Punctuation and spelling, still important. If people see an egregious misspelling, then they immediately think that you're stupid. Really.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless you're using, unless you're very intentionally doing it. Like it has to be very obvious that you're misspelling.
Right. There has to be a point to it.
Ben Settle comes to mind. He does this all the time. So if you're going to say, he spells stupid, STOOPID, on purpose.
On purpose.
To kind of make a point and kind of just create his own style.
Exactly.
So you can do that. And again, it depends on your niche and things like that. I wouldn't do that for some of my clients. Greg, you probably might not do it for your clients. But yeah, definitely if I open the email and I glance at it and I see a wall of text with no white space, I'm like, dude, I'm out.
Yep.
But if I see a bunch of blanks, I don't even really think about the scroll as much. I'm like, at least I'm going to start reading it.
Right.
So yeah, white space is so important. It's why a lot of sales letters end up being 25 or 30 pages if you were to do them on a Word doc, because you just the return button on your keyboard is your best friend.
Absolutely.
They really do. And it really helps with number 3, which is the pace of writing. Literally how you put the words on paper helps with pace.
Absolutely. Yeah. It controls the speed of how you are.
The readability. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Anything else you want to talk about on structure and style before we wrap?
The last thing is it's totally valid to use bold and italics and capital letters as points of emphasis. I like to do this oftentimes. If people are just going to quickly scroll and actually not read every word, I like to play this game with myself. Can I just use some really tactical bold lettering throughout the email so that somebody could scan it, catch 3 words per sentence, and get the gist of what it is that I'm trying to convey. So sometimes I'm like all about this and I do it really well. And other times I'm like, I don't feel like doing this today. You got to read it all. Sorry. But it is really helpful. You're helping the reader, but again, you're drawing them to the bottom. You're drawing them to the call to action. And if they can scan it in 30 seconds and know whether or not they want to click, or at least know whether or not they want to go back and read it, then you're still better off than if they just see this thing and then decide to bounce out because it's too much work right now.
Yeah, subheadings work well for that you can bold. People are used to reading subheads in blog posts and articles and things like that, magazines. So I think you can use those to your advantage. Having short one-liners that are transition statements are another way to do that. Yeah, I think the good thing about bold especially is you almost can't help but read them.
Right.
Like it catches your eye. And then the way most people read, in my experience, if you look at heat maps and other things, most people will scan a page, and then if things catch their eye, they'll kind of read around it. And if they like what they read, they'll kind of reread. So very few people go straight down a page.
Yeah.
I mean, Joseph Sugarman might be upset about that when I say that. But the fact is, most people kind of scan and kind of read in these elliptical little loops. I think it's the way most people actually read. I know it's how I read sales letters. It's how I read a lot of emails. Unless that first line is just, which this is where Sugarman would be excited. Like if that first line is a really good hook, then you might read linear just straight down the page if it's really well done. But for the people that aren't going to do that, you definitely need those places where they can jump back in and then kind of go back up.
Right.
Whew. Well, that was good stuff. And we got through 5 of the 7 deadly sins of story-based marketing. So, Greg, where can people find out the other 2 and learn, kind of keep in touch with you and learn more about what you're up to and your insights and your wisdom and your guru-ness around writing story-based emails?
Sure. So I do this weekly newsletter, and it's really just fun. It's just fun for me. It's kind of my playground where I get to talk about what I'm learning, what I'm trying, what I'm doing, both in my own business and in others. And so I try to keep it really informative, entertaining. But I also rule it with an iron fist. So I keep my open rates very high by kicking people out who don't open the emails. So this is a tactic that can be used if you need, a high percentage compliance for a particular thing. Easy, just kick out all the people who don't comply. That's how I run my newsletter. So just as a warning. But people
no
can
soup for you. No
no
soup
soup for you. People can hop on. I put together a special landing page just for your listeners.
That is so cool.
Easy to find.
Gives.
Right. So
easy.
It's gives.biz/beer.
Oh, if you can't remember that, you got a real problem.
Say it one more time for the people in the
gives.biz/beer.
Yes.
Yeah. You say / I don't know if that's a forward. I'm still confused 20 years into the internet if that's a / or /
It is a /
All right. If you say so.
/
I just say /. Do you Do you ever
use leaning to the right? It's a forward.
I know, but do you ever use the opposite type of /
Never
on the internet?
Okay, well, you can say / if you want.
That's why I'm so confused. It's like, when do you use the other /? I mean, if
everyone, if they're giving a URL, they always say /.
No,
they never say /. I've never hear anyone say /.
But see, I'm like, well, when do you use the /? That's the question. If you say / you have to like. The assumption is there's a time to use a /.
There is a time to use a /.
When?
But it's not in this URL.
Not in this. Not on the web apparently. So okay. Sorry, Greg.
No,
Greg's like, great. What is going on? That's a whole that's
gives.biz / not / beer.
I'm going to use that in a stand-up set. The difference between a forward and /. Like, when to use which.
Yeah.
That'd be a good stand-up set.
That's like
Greg, this has been fun.
Be a great Seinfeld type.
That would be a great Seinfeld.
It would
Seinfeld in the age of the internet.
Yeah, they should bring it back just for that.
Just for that. Yeah.
Maybe that could be like a comedian.
What's the deal with the / right?
What's the deal? Oh, I can see that. Cool. Definitely a whole show right there.
Well, Thank you, gentlemen, for having me on. This has been a pleasure.
Greg, it's been a lot of fun, man. Hey, we're going to, we'll send you to the green room for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Sean and I will close out the show, and we'll bring you back up here in a second.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks. All right. That was fun, man.
Yeah.
Really good.
5 of the 7 deadly sins.
5.
See, we ended up at 5 anyway. See how I controlled that to make myself right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Leave your audience hanging.
Yes.
So
always leave them wanting more.
That's right. Gives.biz / beer. We'll be posting a link on our show page, and you can find it over at persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on all of your podcast platforms, Stitcher Radio, iHeart, Spotify, you name it. Sean, we've got another episode to take care of.
We do.
See you guys next time.
See ya.